Welcome to the Marshall Pruett Podcast and our 2018 Formula One season review. I have as my guest, my friend, my racer colleague, Chris Medland. Chris, you are down under in Oz right now, ready to kick off the Australian Grand Prix as one of a handful of full-time traveling Formula One reporters. A, how are you? And B, I know what it's like going from extreme time changes. How are you doing with the UK to Australia conversion with your old body clock right now?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for having me, Marshall. I'm currently sort of sat in, got one of those apartments that you can rent, and got a great view of the city, but it means the sunrise very early wakes you up, which I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but it kind of forces you onto local time pretty quickly. So it's been a busy couple of days, actually. It's always a lot of hype around the first race, so not had too much time to feel too sorry for myself or too tired.
Good. Well, we had the fortune, myself, Robin Miller, we had the good fortune of having you over for the Indy 500 last year with Fernando Alonso taking part in things. I had you at Daytona for a little bit, which was fun. The Rolex 24 covering some of the F1 drivers there too. So now I'm glad that while you've come over and partaken in the American fun, I'm glad that I can throw things back your way and have you help me and my listeners get ready for the F1 season ahead. So I don't want to start off with predictions, who's going to win everything, who's going to be glorious. I'd rather look through the teams and look through the drivers and get your thoughts on critical changes that they have made during the off-season, what you've seen in testing, and what kind of mental adjustments, either in the positive or the crumbling direction, you might have seen within the old gray matter composition among the drivers. Let's start off with the big red threat. And I don't mean threat as for winning the championship. I mean as in, we're going to quit. Our friends at Scuderia Ferrari. What comes to mind, Chris, when you look at that team having been incredibly strong for some of the 2017 championship, but critically not all of it? What have you seen during this offseason from an organizational standpoint that makes you think the Arriva Bene crew might be performing better or more consistently than last year? Or am I having a bit of a pipe dream on that topic?
I think performing more consistently might not be a pipe dream. I think better might be a bit of a pipe dream. They look like they're struggling quite a bit with fuel consumption. Certainly were during testing, and that could be because the track in Barcelona was relayed, so there was more grip and there was more full throttle time. But they do have to go back and race there in May, so they're going to deal with that problem at least there. But it could be a problem at every circuit. So we'll have to wait and see if that hampers the pace they can show. But it wasn't exactly a outstanding start to the year from Ferrari. We didn't see them at testing and think, oh wow, they're really on it. It was more Mercedes that stood out for its pace. So I think what Ferrari needs to aim for is, as you say, making sure wherever they start that they improve during the year, but avoid that massive drop-off that they had last season when reliability just caught up with them far too early and completely derailed their challenge, having looked so good for so long.
So some of the issues that they had last year were comically small. I don't mean comically as if we're laughing, just a spark plug issue, something that in this day and age, it's hard to fathom such a thing could leave a car stranded on the starting grid or late to start the race. When you look from a hierarchical standpoint, Chris, we know that its team boss has helped turn the program from a well-storied kind of quasi-contender, but really falling short in key areas against Mercedes to, we're in with a fight to start last season, for example. And, okay, we actually have Vettel making Hamilton sweat this championship for a decent portion of the year, at least to the midsummer's break. Have you seen anything from a personnel standpoint, a body language standpoint in testing, something that makes us think They're the improvements in the off-track portion of what makes a grand Formula One team like Scuderia Ferrari improve in those key areas that we saw derail their ability to, truly mount a season-long championship against Mercedes.
Well, I guess part of the thing to look at is that I feel Ferrari's kind of turnaround that put it near the front last year is more to be looked at Mattia Binotto, the technical director, rather than Arriva Bene himself. I think Arriva Bene became a bit of a kind of a figurehead who didn't really seem to have a huge amount of influence in terms of sort of what was going on within the team. He was there to be the front of it, but the real hard work going on behind the scenes was almost being protected by him a bit, and that's what kind of let them shine. But it also is what can be Ferrari's downfall, is it's very insular. It's on its own in Italy. Even Toro Rosso, the other Italian-based team, have got a base in the UK and links to Red Bull, obviously. But Ferrari is so insular that they almost seem to sort of beat themselves up internally at times. And I think that's one of the things that maybe is a focus for theirs to try and stop happening in the future. But when Sergio Marchionne's coming out with grand statements, that's quite hard to do. So that's why you need Arriva Bene to kind of be the buffer between Marchionne and some of his comments, and Binotto, who's trying to organise a technical team and run a Formula One team and get it back to the front. I think what Ferrari should have done, and it's not easy for Ferrari because of the passion that's there and the pressure from the Italian fans and media, but what it should have done is just remembered how well it did last year, how big a step forward it took, how hard it pushed Mercedes to a level we haven't seen since the V6s came in 2014. And it's trying to improve on that, but it doesn't need to rewrite the whole book. So I think it would have been sort of tweaks made behind the scenes by Binotto. It would have been learning very much from those mistakes because they were reliability issues that really derailed them, as you say, rather than, it's not like they designed the car badly and, an upgrade failed or that they stopped developing the car. It was reliability that started to really hurt. And like you say, some pretty comical ones that just in this day and age of Formula One, you can't allow to happen anymore. You need to be able to change an engine or a power unit within a short time frame. You need to be able to do work on your car on the grid. Because otherwise a small thing like a spark plug becomes a showstopper. So I think they're small issues that maybe get overlooked until you hit them. They're not top of your list when you're designing a new car or a new engine. So they're things that they'll have dealt with last year, spent the winter trying to make sure they don't have them again. And that might be one of the reasons why we haven't seen a huge or a big performance step forward, because they were focusing on the reliability thing. We've got fewer power units this year, fewer components. They've got to do so much more. Some components have to do half the season. So if you're focusing on that reliability, then maybe you're not pushing the envelope in terms of performance. And that's why I think pre-season we won't read it to 100%, because that could have been masked slightly while Ferrari looked at those things that really hurt it last year.
A couple other quick things stand out with Ferrari, and some of this is looking back to 2017 again, Chris, but part of me thinks, because I've seen it happen in other championships, but also in Formula One, where a massive emphasis was placed on immediate performance, early season performance. And obviously engineers and designers have ideas all year long. Formula One's rule set thankfully allow for a variety of upgrades to happen throughout the entire championship. Part of me thinks, and I'm curious if you think there's anything to this or not, that last year at least Ferrari placed such a heavy emphasis on making an amazing start, poured massive amounts of time, money, resources into its early form from an engineering standpoint, that frankly by the middle of the championship, or at least leading into the close of the championship, it almost felt like they'd run out of ideas. So I'm not saying the cars lost all of their pace, but in that development race between themselves and Mercedes, it seems like Mercedes had more steam, more ideas, more development to keep advancing forward. It almost felt like Ferrari had spent what they had earlier in the year and struggled in that capacity. Do you think there's anything to that? And do you think if there is something there, they might take a different approach, which says don't spend it all up front and then have really nothing left to pull out if you need to react late in the season this year.
I think I can certainly see where that impression would come in, but I think that's where you've got to remember where Ferrari were a year before that in 2016 and how far off Mercedes they were. That they did a very good job with the new regulations we had in 2017 and hit the ground running. Mercedes, on the other hand, did a good job, but they couldn't quite get the car working all the time. And you could see the potential in the Mercedes was probably greater. The performance in there was greater than what was in the Ferrari, but Ferrari had created a car that was very usable, that they could get working on basically every circuit and be competitive at basically every track. And once Mercedes, it was sort of the Mercedes development was based on ironing out its weaknesses. And once it did that, it looked stronger as the year went on. I think Ferrari started from a high line and it just had a smaller margin of improvement with the car it had. It still developed it well. But it was more that Mercedes started further off the full potential of its car at the start of the year. So I don't feel it was actually a weakness of Ferrari's, more just kind of a sign of, Mercedes did still have the edge. But as you say, then it also gets clouded. When you're trying to deal with reliability issues, you're not focusing on the performance you're putting on the car. You're maybe not running it quite as hard as you could be, and you're wasting time and resource on other things. But the big teams at the front, I mean, they are non-stop developing, doing the wind tunnels going, doing CFD, looking to bring upgrades at every single race. To the extent that the cars we saw at testing, we're expecting to be completely different when we see them in FP1 here, because the teams work on understanding the base car as such during the 2 weeks of testing, getting it working reliably, and then they bolt on a bunch of performance in Australia because they've had an extra 2 weeks then to work on some of those new aerodynamic parts. So I think Ferrari's approach will actually be very similar to last year. And I do think when you look at where they were, as you say, over the summer break, and where Vettel was, especially in that championship battle, without the Singapore start, the whole season's completely different. And that wasn't a car development problem. That was a driver mistake. And if he gets that right, we're having a different conversation. So that's where I think Ferrari's approach will actually be very similar. Just Mercedes is just such a big, powerful force and has some huge strength and depth in terms of its technical department, that's maybe a battle that inevitably Ferrari is going to lose, because it just doesn't quite have the same number of people with the experience that Mercedes have and the finances that go with that.
Looking to their drivers, Vettel, we know, is always a potential champion. It seems to me in a more regimented, I don't want to say droll, but Red Bull Vettel seemed to be something where his personality worked well because the team, fun, warm, engaging, and all those things, but also incredibly workmanlike, seemed to be a really strong balance. This could be an oversimplification, but part of me wonders if Vettel, who tends to be one of the more emotional Formula One drivers, if his ability to tip into his emotions, the team's ability to tip into their emotions, whether that is the right chemical composition for future world championships to fall their way. I mean, you mentioned a great point just now about, last year had Singapore gone differently, but do you think Vettel's at a point in his career where he can tap into that lower emotional register, more of that even keel that I know tends to produce more world champions than fewer world champions? Do you think there's something within Sebastian that could change to the team's benefit from his approach? Or do you think at this stage of his career, who he is who he is, that's baked in, and whatever comes of this association, there's not much tweaking that can really be done?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think there's a huge amount of tweaking that can be done. And I think that's because Vettel will sit there and say, I've got 4 world championships. I'm a successful driver. I don't need to change for you, as in for Ferrari. And the kind of emotion that goes around Ferrari, it's very difficult to escape. So maybe